Hello everyone, I'm Maureen Hannon, Instructional Designer for CREC. In continuing to support CREC's network of compliance professionals, today we've invited Melanie Sheldon, the Director of Business Development for the Nevada Governor's Office of Economic Development, to share her experience and lessons learned. Interviewing Melanie is our workshop co-leader, Jane Bansell, founder and owner of the technology platform Incentilock. Jane, the mic is all yours.
Thanks, Maureen, for the kind introduction. Melanie, and thank you for being here today and taking time out of your busy schedule. We're so excited to hear about what's been going on with Nevada.
Thank you for having me, Jane.
You're very welcome. And remind me, how long have you been in the Governor's Office of Economic Development?
I have been there for 4.5 years and in this position for 2 years.
Okay, thanks. Well, you've been doing some really fun stuff. And as we were going through the states that were interested in talking to us, we were especially interested in Nevada and all the things you've been doing and about your legislature. So would you mind if I just ask you a few questions?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Would you mind to share with us what your idea of a strong plan for managing compliance might look like?
In Nevada, we actually have a cross-agency approach to our incentive compliance. So we have the Nevada Governor's Office of Economic Development, or GOED, my team, and we actually manage the incentive process and the contractual phase of that incentive process. The Department of Taxation actually administers the abatements as well as the county assessors. So we've got quite a robust team that work on this, and we have dedicated resources in each area. On top of that, we also have a compliance manager in our office who also works across all of the groups. And then we have a research department that really gets down to the metrics and the measurements of the incentives.
Okay, thanks. So is it true that Nevada does not offer discretionary incentives?
That is correct, Jane. It is true. Currently, Nevada's incentive program is entirely statutory. We started off with a standard abatement package. Later on, there was the addition of the data center abatement package and the aviation abatement package, and that was actually brought into statute by the 2015 legislative session. And then on top of that, we later added a $1 billion and a $3.5 billion incentive package. The catalyst for that was the $1 billion one was Faraday Future, and the $3.5 billion investment package was Tesla. Now, Tesla and Faraday were the catalysts for those packages. However, those packages now exist in statute and they're not specific just to those companies. Any company who meets the eligibility criteria for those incentive packages and any company who is going to make the same commitment as those two companies are eligible to submit an application to apply for either of those incentive packages.
So Melanie, everybody's interested in Tesla, right? They're doing so many great things. Can you tell us about that $3.5 billion project and how that's been going?
Yes. Tesla actually have a slightly higher level of compliance than the other incentive packages, or the $3.5 billion package actually has a higher level of compliance. And the company is audited by a third-party auditor, and that's done every state fiscal year. So we are able to receive those results. And to date, we've been very happy with those results. The company has done everything they said they were going to do, and then some on top of that. So far, so good.
That's great news. So one of the things that I think is a little different for Nevada is your legislature. Can you tell us how that differs from other states?
Yes. So Nevada has a citizen legislature that sits every 2 years. I believe most states, apart from maybe 3 or 4, they'll have a legislature that'll sit every year. Ours will be every year on the odd year. And that's when a lot of changes are often made to our incentive packages. I should have said before that the $1 billion incentive package and the $3.5 billion incentive package were actually written into statute or brought into statute by a special session. So that didn't happen in one of our normal sessions. The packages were brought in front of the legislature for a special session, and the governor convenes that special session, or I believe the legislature can via a petition process as well. But those packages were brought in front of the legislature and they were voted on, and both of them approved and passed. So that's how they both ended up to be part of the statutory packages.
Okay, you got me to my next question. I was wondering how you could wait 2 years in between legislature coming together. So thanks for that. So let's talk about the actual compliance process. And can you tell us why you think strengthening relationships is the most important part of your job?
I think it's because there are so many moving parts and different agencies involved. We really have to be on the same page, and we need to have a good relationship and that clear and concise communication. Some of these packages are new and there are things we need to work through as they become implemented. So it's great for an agency to be able to speak to us and say, this is working for us or this isn't. And that's really helped us refine the packages along the way. And they're always a work in progress. The incentive packages are tweaked as much as possible to reflect the economy of the time. And so if we have that collaborative approach about that, we can actually build something together that works for everyone. On top of that, it's important that the companies we work with have a good relationship with both our office and the Department of Taxation and the county assessor, because these are the people that are actually going to work with them through the life of their project. And so it's important to have those relationships so that we can communicate and make the processes as effective as possible for all participants.
So that's really interesting. So your compliance is done if there is a property tax component, that compliance is done by the assessor's office. Is that right? And if there's a sales tax component, then that's done by the Department of Taxation?
That's correct. Yes. The Department of Taxation will actually carry out the audit, but they will work closely with the county assessor to gain that personal property tax information as well.
So over time and building these relationships, can you tell us what works really well in building those?
I think once again, communication is key here, and ensuring that you touch base with these groups. We have a quarterly meeting with the Department of Taxation to discuss what's working and what's not working. And that does include the informal conversations that I'll often have with the audit team on a weekly, if not more frequent basis as well. We also ensure the companies have an early engagement with the Department of Taxation. So before they even apply before they even go in front of the board to have their incentive application heard, we'll have a phone call with the company, with my team and with the Department of Taxation to talk about not only the application process, but what's going to come afterwards and what the company can expect. It also allows them to ask any questions they might have to the Department of Taxation on the administration process. And that introduces the company to their audit team as well as us, so they know that they have contacts in different areas should they need them.
Okay, so it looks, if I've done any little bit of research on Nevada, it looks like the incentives are heavily weighted or used more, I guess, prominently on sales and use taxes. Can you tell us why that's been the choice by Nevada?
It's because Nevada is a very low tax state. We don't have any income tax, any personal income tax. We don't have any corporate income tax. There are a lot of taxes that we don't have. So our abatement package was really built around the main taxes that a company would encounter should they locate or expand in Nevada. And that is your sales and use tax, your modified business tax or payroll tax, sometimes it's known as, and your personal property tax. So that's why the abatement program was designed to provide relief in those 3 areas.
Okay, thanks. So Nevada has a very complex approach to incentives, and probably that's true of all the states, but can you walk us through your multi-pronged, I guess, decision making?
Absolutely. Our standard abatement package is the most popular package that's utilised, and that has a job creation criteria, a wage criteria, a capital equipment investment criteria, a payment of healthcare premiums criteria, and an out-of-state revenue criteria. So that's 5. And a company can submit an application, and we'll actually vet that application against those 5 criteria and ensure that the company is in good standing with all of those. And that's how we know that an application can move forward or not. And if that criteria is met, then we will work on refining that application so it can go in front of the board for deliberation.
How long does that process take, really?
We have a board meeting quarterly. It was bi-monthly, but it has moved to quarterly. And so we send out a calendar at the beginning of the year to all our economic development partners, and so they can share that with the companies they're working with. And then as we receive those applications, we'll prepare them for the upcoming meeting. If for whatever reason the application is not going to be ready for the next meeting, we can move it to the following one and just continue to do whatever work is needed on that.
Okay. Do companies are they ever approved in between the quarters?
No, our approval process is done by the board, the GOED board. So we have that quarterly board meeting. The governor sits on that board, the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, and then there's 6 appointed business officials from across the Nevadan business community. So they are the group that is charged with making the final decision on whether an incentive application is approved or not.
Wow, that sounds incredible. That's a lot of people to get together at one time, isn't it?
That is, and that's a public meeting as well. So obviously there's a lot of interest. We have members of the press, so it does garner a lot of interest.
Sure, rightfully so too. And then I noticed that Nevada has very few companies that don't meet their commitments or fail to comply. Can you tell us why you think that is?
I think it's due to the contractual phase. So every company that is approved for incentives enters into a contract with the state of Nevada. And it does lay out very clearly the expectations and the requirements for both sides. And it talks about the audit process. It also talks about the recapture provisions that will occur should a company not be deemed compliant. I think it's very useful to have that up front in black and white so that it's very clear to all parties what their requirements are.
That's a great idea. I think everybody could use something similar. And then I was interested about whether or not Nevada puts caps on any of its programs or on the benefits that can be received.
We currently don't, and that is because it's a tax abatement program. So there's no money that actually changes hands. It is really, the company really receives a discount on the new tax liability they're generating. So, the more investment they're making, the more jobs they're creating, the higher their abatement will be. And their abatement is in direct correlation to those job creation and investment numbers. So because there's no definite numbers, there's no caps at this stage on what a company can receive as an abatement.
So Nevada does not do upfront payments?
We do not. All our abatements are performance based, and there are no abatements available or incentives available that are currently front loaded.
Okay. So the last question I have, and we talked about this a little bit on our initial call, is about GASB 77. And I think that while we were even on the call, it was clear, or you looked up, or Jimmy actually may have looked it up for us, that the comptroller handles the GASB 77 footnote. And I would have just been curious about whether or not EDOs actually provide or are asked to provide narrative around those numbers, because the readers of the CAFR may think that that abatement number looks really bad. And so because of your approach, your 5 criteria especially, you obviously are gathering a lot of metrics and information about project progress. And I just wondered if it just seems that that information would be really helpful to a reader. And I wondered if that's anything you've been involved with so far.
We do actually measure the programs very consistently and closely, and we measure them on a lot of different levels, and we make that information available to our legislature, and that is something we're bound by law to provide. And we also do what's known as a metrics report to our board for those quarterly board meetings, and that takes into account the return of investment per abated dollar, the job creation, the capital investment to date, the wages of incentivized companies versus non-incentivized companies, and the same with the capital equipment. So we are constantly measuring that and pulling those metrics from every company that we work with. And so it's readily available, and we can always sort of mix that up and chop and change that into any report that's needed, just because that research is ongoing.
Thanks for that too. Is any of that information public?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when we report to the legislature, we do a really big overview, and it's got everything to do with compliance. The metric report, all the papers for the board meeting are public. So those metric reports they're published quarterly, and they're board members public. Everyone can see all those. So yeah, we're actually not allowed to keep too many cards close to our chest. So about the public thing, please don't be nervous. You can probably guarantee it's out there.
All right, Melanie, I can't thank you enough for your time today. This has been really fun. I loved learning about Nevada and all the great work you're doing there, and really looking forward to talking to you more in the future and sharing information across all the other channels, and hearing from the other states and seeing how people react, and seeing if it's helpful.
Thank you so much, Jane. This is super helpful. I'm looking forward to learning more as well. Thank you to everything that you and your team do.